Hey everybody, it's Steve again. Um, so I have a new secret that I've discovered. It's not that new. I think I might have even told you about it before. Coffee beans. Any coffee beans will work. It doesn't have to be whatever this is. Coffee beans are a great snack. They're crispy. Um, you can buy them in basically several different flavors. Um, you can get them in dark roast, which I don't like. You can get them in light roast, which I do like. The darker the roast, the crispier they are. And there's even, old school like the '80s or whatever. There's flavored coffees, like coconut and all that kind of stuff. But the idea is there's not a ton of carbs or anything like that, and they give you a ton of energy, and there's a lot of fiber, so it's good for you. Um, and it's weirdly satisfying because you can just one at a time it or whatever, and it has this long effect of of being able you can just graze on them, you can just munch on them and stuff like that for a long time, and you're not going to gain weight from it. So it ends up becoming kind of a moot point. Anything you'd get out of it carb wise, which is not much, you would also get energy, which would burn any kind of the carbs off or whatever. Um, So it's been working for me actually. It's been helping me lose weight. So that's always a good thing, you know. And for anybody that's diabetic, I am diabetic. You can eat those without bumping up your glucose levels, um, but you're still getting a snack kind of a thing, which is weird that we're programmed to munch on stuff, but and that now the 99% of everything that we have that we can munch on is either like crackers or chips or something like that, full of carbs, full of salt, full of fat, and the worst kinds of fat. So coffee beans, it's the new snack. Give it a try and get creative with the kinds you buy. So, boom. Um, that was number one. Um, so geopolitics. Um, I was really worried for a while, to be honest, about the Trump thing and stuff, and then all of a sudden, not insanely worried. Some people are just frothing at the mouth. It's almost like when he got elected both times, and people were like having coronaries and stuff like that. But for me, it's been more of a slow burn watching the country I grew up in just disintegrate. You know, I grew up in the Cold War in a close up version to it. Um, my entire life, I heard the stories about um, my dad's military career that got cut short, and his all of his friends died on a submarine, that was sunk by the Soviet Union, in retaliation for what they believed we had done to them. It was a mistake. They thought we had the the belief is they thought that we had sunk one of their submarines in the early '60s, and that there had been provocations back and forth about different things. And during the entire Cold War, from the '60s, and I don't know much about before then, but from the '60s uh, all the way up into the '90s, um, the Soviet Union was very, very, very active, and we were too, at least as much, at trying to one up each other. I mean, the entire space program was invested in by America because of uh, a PR race against Russia, against the Soviet Union. And as soon as the Soviet Union folded, which meant we, quote unquote, meant we won the Cold War, which that's what everybody was saying when the Soviet Union crashed, and then they became Russia. We were wrong. It didn't end. We just thought it did, which is embarrassing to say. I wasn't involved, not really in the intel side of it. I guess I was, but I guess I wasn't. But there was a ton of stuff happening, that continued to happen, and that we were sort of paying attention. We were sort of participating. But for the most part, there was so many people saying, "Hey, we're not going to spend this money anymore." Civilian government, telling people trying to, during, appropriations bills and stuff like that, we're not going to spend that money. We're going to put that money on other things, which is wise and all. The problem is, though, even though the Soviet Union was no more and Russia didn't have any money anymore, there was programs that were continuing. There wasn't a giant investment in them. There was stuff that was in place and that could be kept in place with what they had. So they had a little bit of a problem with continuity government, but there were some key players, in the KGB and some things like that stayed, and they got basically renamed. But they kept playing the game, and we stopped for the most part. We kept people on the ground and stuff, but they stopped getting the intel money that they needed, and so it continued. And right now, they're at a stage where if we were arm wrestling, our elbow would be really, really hurting, and they'd be really, really pushing at this very last bit to try to just smash us. Unfortunately for them, the only bit of continuity of government that they have is like Putin, and he's a nut. He's not as bad as Trump, but he's still a nut. He's got giant delusions of grandeur. He has even voiced the fact that he believes he's like Peter the Great, but he's not. He's kind of a Peter, but he's not very great. Anyway, that's our good luck that Putin is the guy that we're against, because he's no Adolf Hitler, he's no evil genius. He's just evil. And then the person that they recruited, and this is another thing that makes me feel good about the country I grew up in. The best they could do was Donald Trump, because not every American is available for purchase. Most of us aren't. And they had a difficult time finding the right person in the early 80s to buy and to coerce, which was at the time Putin's specialty, in the KGB, was he was a handler. And he was a kind of a recruiter, in that he was one of the people that helped coerce people into doing things that they wanted, and turning on their own people by finding weaknesses and finding, things that motivated them. And in Donald Trump's case, it's just plain money and power. And that's the things that they deal with, that they deal in. America and Russia, they all have money and power, the governments. And so you can offer the tiniest little sliver of that. And with Donald Trump, it wasn't necessary. They just bailed him out 1 billion times, and kept him out of jail, kept him out of the poorhouse, and stuff like that. And so that's really what they needed to do. They needed what's called a useful idiot, and somebody who is dumb enough to get themselves in trouble constantly and need bailing out. And at the same time, well placed enough to where that if he would listen, and if he would obey, he could be managed to put him in a better and better and better position. Well, that worked out for them. This is the best psyop that Russia ever did. And honestly, my hat's off to him, because it was flawlessly done against a country that was really on its game for the most part, comparatively, and still it didn't matter. So that means Russia's chess in this particular case was excellent. And they found our weaknesses, which is our civilian government is not our weakness, but they found the weakness of the civilian government, which is greed. And they one by one replaced all of the faithful politicians, on one side at least, with ones that they could manipulate. So the people that I'm talking about, 99% of them, I don't even think they were put there by them. They think it was the normal system that's kind of evolved into a more of an openly monetary, not monetarily based system, where that basically you can buy politicians. They just didn't know where the money was coming from, and some of the influence. But what changed our political landscape is the fact that people like Putin were choosing who to hire. They were looking for particular kinds of people, and they were choosing who to hire. And one by one, they've put people in those positions around the country that represent us in Washington, that are for sale, and that they're in their eyes are dollar signs, and that they don't have a lot of patriotic loyalty. And they were definitely subject to being able to be persuaded by money. So one of the things they did was change the term patriotism into meaning something totally different. And they bastardized our flag and our national pride, and turned it into a weapon of evil. It wasn't really awesome before in some ways. There's a lot of really core veterans and just Americans, whether they're ranchers or who knows what, that really saw the point, of our democracy. And eventually that whole term, patriotism and the 4th of July and all those things, were handed over to this other group of people. And and then it makes it to where that a person like me, who grew up in the military in the Cold War, saw the sacrifices from all of my, like my father, his father, my mother's father, his father, and all my cousins and uncles that were in the military and did what they did. I got to see those things and grow up with those things, and really understood completely in my time in the military. I got to understand completely what it was to be a patriot, and that it's not a selfish thing. It's a service thing, and that's why they call it going into the service, because you're in the service of the country. You're a servant of the country, and that means you're willing to sacrifice anything. In fact, to see that not taken from my fingers by force, but by convincing weak-minded people who still have a vote to get off their ass and vote, but for whatever some person that's being manipulated saying to vote for, to have it taken away that way is pretty gut-wrenching, So part of this is an address to people that I know in England and in Australia and Canada, especially in South America, who look at our situation and are wondering what the hell's wrong with us, why we're allowing this, right? And I identify with you. This is a great lesson, a life lesson for me. I used to look at Germany and think that there was something wrong with Germany, the people of Germany, not just, the leaders at that time or whatever, but how could they let that happen unless there was something wrong with them, unless they were weak, you know? And some countries that I consider kind of the weakest in the world have actually, either they weren't picked on or they resisted. I don't know which, but my idea of what a weak country is has changed, because I think that Russia, which is a powerful country, not as much now as it used to be, but picked on the most powerful country on earth and is winning. You know, it's granted it's a chess match, and America has not specialized in the last 50 years at sharpening our minds. We've been relaxing on our very muscular buttocks, and while somebody was taking candy away from a big baby, simple as that, with their minds, you know, and by making us do it to ourselves. That's it. Their big strength is they made us do it. They made us do it to ourselves. And the other problem with that is we were told about this. We were warned about this in the 80s by several different people that were well connected in Russia that defected to America. And I've seen the videos, at least some of them, where that a defector that was quite credentialed told us, and there's several of them, and I've seen 2 or 3 of them, that this is what's going to happen. Exactly what has been happening. They predicted it decades ago. And it wasn't a prediction like Nostradamus. They were saying, this is what the plan is. This is what they're going to do to you. And that they had apparently already started it. And we either didn't heed those warnings, or it was simply a chess match again where we failed. You know, one part of the government failed to communicate with another part of the government, a lot like 9/11 kind of a thing, where that no matter how well put together or how well established our intelligence programs are, the CIA and the NSA didn't communicate well with the FBI and local law enforcement in America, and none of those guys coordinated with the military. All of those things that should have happened during 9/11. I have my own beliefs about what happened on 9/11, and I think that a lot of pieces on the board were moved around to make it impossible for us to do those things because of civilian political interests. You know, again, it's all about money and power and legacy, and people sold us down the river. Which is sad too, because some of the people that sold us down the river are family members of some of the highest quality patriots in American history. But clearly they were great patriots, but they didn't raise their children well, so we sort of bit the big one on that. So, but the thing is that steel gets stronger the more you abuse it, right? And the more times you pound it, and the more times you fold it on each other, and the more carbon you add to it, and then you cool it off, which is violent, to cool off red steel like that, red metal. You do this over and over and over again, and pretty soon it's the hardest steel you could get, right? That's what's happening to America right now. It's happened for a long time too. Every war we've ever been into was actually brilliant in that, we've developed because of those wars. We rewarded innovation, which is what the Soviet Union and even then Russia and China do not do. They do not reward innovation. We do. Our system of government, even though it's rife with other problems because of greed. We reward innovation. Our colleges reward innovation. People are actively always seeking out the best and the brightest to sharpen those tools. whereas there's a lack of motivation for it in the other countries because they have a system that relies on everybody being the same. The problem is that they're always corrupt. Some people are more equal than others, you know. So, if it was run by AI, it would be perfectly efficient, and it would be a socialist or communist system, but in the purest sense, and there would be no corruption because AI in the way I envision super AI coming around wouldn't put up with that, and it would predict it enough to where that every time somebody even got the idea, it would already know that they're the ones going to get the idea, and it would right away be able to stop doing that. We see what's happening. We know what you're doing, and if they took it one more step, it would intervene, right? Well, we're not there yet, and so people are being, corruption is not new to the human species. Everywhere on Earth and in history, there's always been somebody that's corrupt. There's always one cousin or something that's weird, or like in my family, I'm definitely one of the weird ones. Grew up like an ADHD kid without being diagnosed. One of my cousins was another ADHD kid, just like me. Out of kind of a sea of us, he and I were the ones. He got medicated. I don't know that it helped him. I didn't get medicated. My parents wanted me to because they had conferred with different smart people, and they wanted me to learn how to cope. And I did. I learned a lot of how to cope. But it shouldn't be an all or nothing thing. And maybe Ritalin wasn't the answer. Maybe there was some other kinds of medications that could have been developed at the time. But it fell through the cracks because we were doing other things with our money, in America. We were developing stuff like diabetes and cancer, which is, when I say developing, we had those things around forever, for a long time, but our medical system was figuring out a way to monetize that. And the best way to monetize a disease is to keep it going so that you can dole out sell the cure little by little by little, and where it never becomes permanent, right? Well, that's another thing that AI will eliminate, which is why all the super powerful people are really, really against AI, and all the big stories are happening about how bad it's going to be, and it's apocalypse and all this kind of stuff. And it's because it'll get rid of greedy people's ways of making money, like doing that, the medical stuff, extortion that it's doing to people, threatening people's children, with brain cancer and shit like that. Like the fact that that American children now have, their number one health threat now is diabetes for children. You can look at pictures of, hundreds of people in the 60s and not one of them would be fat. And you take a picture from the 90s of the same number of people in the same location, and 3/4 of them are fat. And it's not an accident. It's not an accidental fad or anything like that. It was an engineered thing. The food companies, that supposedly are making food less expensive for us when they're not, or more convenient for us, which is, it's really, really convenient to take arsenic and then die. You just have to, that's the one last meal you ever have to take. Well, they're doing it really, really slowly to develop these other things for these other people that are involved in the extortion of, the medical and pharmaceutical stuff. The food production in America is owned by 3 companies. Literally, it's come down to 3 companies like Kraft and stuff, where that you now very conveniently can buy all your meals that are ready to go in a box, and stuff. And if you read the back of it, which is now required, that they put that on there. But if you read the back of it, you'll see all the carbs and sugar and salt and fat from the worst kinds of artificial fat. And then miraculously, there's this huge and new obesity problem that includes children in America. So hats off to those people that have, with their greed and stuff, done their very best to damage America, thinking nothing will ever happen to them, And other people are watching that happen like buzzards. and have been waiting for a long time to be able to kind of swoop, and they started to already now, and they've made lots of headway, you know. And like I say, it almost looks like they're close to winning, except they're not. There's one thing, I don't know if they didn't count on it or if they just were crossing their fingers and hoping that it wouldn't happen, but it's just like when America got involved in World War One and then World War Two and stuff. When we do get together and unite, we are a force, and we are a warlike people. And it's not just the tech we've developed over the last 80 years. It's not that. It's the fact that many of us, like me, are willing to fight until the last second of their life. There's not much more powerful than that. And there's an old saying in a business that I used to be involved in a long, long time ago, that if somebody's willing to trade their life, there's no defense. There's no defense against that. If somebody's willing to trade their life to get you, there's no defense against that. So that's what evil people are up against when they get America to go to war with them. They don't stand a chance. They really don't. Because now our tech has not been hampered at all in the last, 90 years, because there's a whole lot of greed behind that. And wherever there's greed, like our space program or like our military industrial complex, there's a lot of development innovation going on. And like I say, those guys had a lot of interest in those things too, but they have a bad, inferior system that doesn't reward innovation. It doesn't seek out really intelligent people and then really sharpen them and then really inspire them to do more and more and more and always more and always more. Ours does. Unlike everybody else's in the entire world, ours really does. There's a bad side to ours. Every coin has its other side, but the good side is that nobody can beat us in tech. And our tech isn't just inside kids stuff. It's in the field stuff. We're watching stuff with Ukraine and Russia right now and stuff like that, and a lot of it's coming down to drones now. America has drones that nobody understands at all, and I'll give you a tidbit. We gave Iran a drone a long time ago. Gave it to them. It was not a backroom deal, but it was also not made public because an ally of ours, who we want to keep to this day, and a whole lot of people are shaking their heads as to what are we doing with those people, wanted to obliterate another government that we destabilized on purpose. And so it wouldn't be fair to destroy that government and just flip that country over on its head again. So we gave that government a drone. It wasn't our most advanced drone, but it was close. It's many years ago now. And they were able to develop technology, combat war technology, to stay relevant to some degree in the world. And when I say we gave that to them, we made it look like an oops, but it wasn't an oops. Okay. Now, since then, we have continued to develop drones, and our drone capability now is just insane. Nothing like what Russia and Ukraine has, not even close. A lot of the Shahed drones and stuff are coming from Iran. The Shahed drones are a direct result of that drone we gave Iran. But the Shahed drones, I guess that's how you pronounce them, are nowhere close to being as technologically advanced as ours now. So if we had to go on the battlefield now against anyone, China puts out a zillion drones, really good ones, and they're pretty expensive, anywhere from $12 to $200,000 kind of a thing and stuff. They literally cannot compete with our drones. And so if there's a whole department in the military, several of them, and one of them that I know people in, and then two of the other ones I only know of and have researched a little bit, but that all they do is think forward. Is they're not thinking about today's battlefield. They're thinking about the battlefield in 20 years, always, ever. They're imagining all the crazy shit you could possibly come up with. Some of that comes from sci-fi books. But they're always fighting a war that's in 20 years. And when you do that, you make discoveries from scientific discoveries that are happening right now, that feed the machine, and we have done a shockingly good job. I mean, I had a TSSCI clearance, and I know a lot of people that have that clearance. I've known people that have a bigger clearance than that. What it's called, I don't know. I've read books and stuff like this, but I just never got told because I guess it wasn't part of what I needed to know. But we have a lot of shit that nobody knows about. Somehow even though there's been all the leaks and stuff out there, somehow not from the right people. So we have a ton of shit that people don't know about. And, like any good poker player, we have not just decided to pull those things out, because we want to deal with somebody. Because as soon as we pull that out, somebody somewhere is paying attention. And then suddenly it's not a secret anymore. One of the worst things we ever did was use an atomic bomb on anybody. Because then everybody else wanted to know about it and they figured it out. Best thing we've ever done is keep new breakthroughs secret and then built on those breakthroughs for new breakthroughs and new breakthroughs. And the people that we're against don't even know about the first one, The atomic age is so far gone compared to where we're at now. That it's like it'd be like fighting cavemen with today's modern equipment that people know about, So America's going to be around a long, long time. Presidents have zero authority to look into that kind of thing. That clearance I do know about. I'm not part of it by any means. I'm even close, and I don't think I've ever known anybody that's in that neck of the woods. But I know somebody was in the middle for sure, and they never told me a thing about it. Later, it was other people that told me about it, which is fascinating to me. Anyway, that's some geopolitics stuff, and that all this stuff is happening for a reason at the right time, right reason. I believe this: our entire existence, our entire reality, is a jigsaw puzzle. Okay, it's a jigsaw puzzle that was built, before we began as a universe, whatever, and the pieces have been all falling into place as they are supposed to. Whoever built the jigsaw puzzle knows exactly where the last piece will be placed. All the pieces have a place already, whether they've been installed or not. But nothing's happening by accident. And I just recently noticed something happening. I have no idea. I have no psychic ability or anything like that. It's from observation, close observation. I can tell that something that has been concerning me and then some other stuff that I was watching suddenly formed a pattern. And then once I noticed, I started taking different looks at it from different angles and trying to do as much research as I could. And also I listened to my little inner voice, and stuff that has saved my bacon a few times. And I've paid attention enough to listen to that and say, I know you're real. And so, um, you know, because of that, I know to pay attention to it. And so I've formed a really solid pattern in some things that are happening right now. The Trump thing has been really bothering me. Not because of Trump, Donald Trump or whatever, but because how America has so much changed in a really, really drastic way. But it was a great lesson for me, to be honest, in humility and understanding how Nazi Germany happened and how the people allowed it to happen and how it's not as easy as a lot of people around the world think. We're being, imagine we're in a horse-drawn carriage where the person with the reins in their hand is a nut, and the rest of us are just having to ride and go and hope everything is working out. But at some point, the passengers wouldn't just hope. At some point, if it gets serious enough, the passengers would jump up and somebody would knock that son of a bitch off of his seat and take the reins and start steering right. Well, that's what's happening right now. When it becomes appropriate, somebody's going to knock that guy off of his seat and going to start steering the thing right, so that nobody gets killed in the process. The horses are just doing their jobs, just like the military and all that. But the military also is made of people that are patriots, mostly, by far, especially the people in power. They're some of the people that would help knock the idiot crazy driver off his seat to take the reins and right the cart so nobody gets killed, and all this thing. And so the cart doesn't get destroyed in the whole bit, So the thing with Putin and the buildup to and the threatening of the nuclear war and all that kind of stuff in the Ukraine, all this has been just a sort of a quiet nightmare. But it suddenly came together in a way where I saw, a pattern. One of those things is going to change the other thing. And the other thing is going to be instrumental in guiding the other thing. Okay? So Trump, he's doing a lot of damage to our reputation and to the world, and he's going to get a lot of people killed. I absolutely believe that Russia is going to use a nuke of some size, probably a tactical nuke, which is very small, on somebody in Europe, meaning that could be, whether it's England, France, Italy. Yeah, it could be one of those guys, but it might be one of Putin's neighbors. Who knows? But that's probably going to happen, and I all I can do is take my mind off that because there's nothing I can do about that. But when that happens, it's going to start a whole row of dominoes falling, and all those dominoes have to be there in their places for the end domino to fall like it's supposed to. And Trump is one of those dominoes. And Putin had to be there to start the whole thing. Trump had to be there, or maybe Trump started. I don't know. It's a chicken or the egg thing at this point. But all those things had to be in place for America to be strengthened. We have been the most influential country in the world since Great Britain was the most influential country in the world, and they passed it to us because they had to. And maybe we're going to pass it on to somebody. I don't know, but everything's different now than it has been in history. This is new, and America's not done. And it's not because I want it to not be done. It's just I can see it, how things are happening right now, and something bad's coming, really bad for Europe, and then everybody's going to step in and squash Putin and turn Russia into a different kind of place, which is going to turn China into a different kind of place, because at some point the entire world will be basically run by people that just want peace. And there's always going to be little conflicts here and there, but for the most part, it'll be a place that just wants peace and trade and to to build and to take care of people and to learn all the things we can do, because we're at the very pinpoint of history, the beginning of history. We haven't developed any other planets. We haven't developed the moon. There's so many things ahead of us. We are in our infancy as a species still to this day. Look at time. Look at how things have gone. How long has the Earth been here? How long have humans been here? You'll see that the Earth has raised up and allowed dynasties of animals to fail, and then humans rose up, and we're nowhere near the level of time that a species naturally exists in the world. But then factor in our species has achieved what we have achieved, and there's nothing natural after that. So everything's changing. AI is going to play a big part in that. So all bets are off. Just hang in there, okay? Everything's going to be okay. Everything is going to be okay, for sure. Hang in there. Do the right thing. Resist this bad government we've got right now, and be on the right side of history. In 50 years, 100 years, we'll still be talking about this. So have a great day, everybody, and chill. Be cool.